India is the fintech product leader of the world. And if you are someone who is interested in knowing how these fintech products are created, how product management at the top fintech firms happen, then this is a must watch conversation for you. Today, I have with me Nitin Pulyani, who is a veteran product leader, and he has been leading products at companies such as Ola, Jupiter, PhonePe, and recently he's the head of product at a company called Cashfree Payments. In this conversation, Nitin shares some very important information and some very useful information on how was his journey while he was building, launching, scaling, and iterating on PhonePe's most popular product, which is the PhonePe Soundbox or the smart speaker. Nitin has also shared some important pieces of best practices and advice when it comes to creating any kind of fintech product. And eventually, he also shares some advice on building a thriving career in product management. So, if you are someone who is looking to get into fintech product management, and if you want to understand the 0 to 1 journey of one of the most popular fintech products ever created in India, then you should watch this conversation. And please make sure that you are subscribing to this channel because we are planning the similar kind of conversation with product leaders from various industries. So go ahead and enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Nitin. Thanks for participating in this.
Thanks, Ankit. Thanks for the warm welcome, and thanks for the
Yes.
intro.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. So, Nitin, right, let's get started. So, what do you think? What are you going to promise from today's video? What do you think is listeners going to get when they listen to this full conversation?
Cool. So yeah, I have been developing products in startups for the last 14 odd years, but majority of my experience in the last 7 8 years has been in fintech. So I'm going to talk about how a fintech product management is different from product management in other technology companies. I'll also talk about some of my own experiences, what I've learned so far, so that people who are watching, people who want to learn, can learn from my experience as well. But there are also specific experiences that I've had where um, when you are building products for your consumers, you are not your own customers. So how do you build products for that? How do you empathize with that kind of customer? So I'm going to talk about some of those experiences as well.
Cool. Can't wait for this, Nitin. Thanks a lot. So, Nitin, just to go ahead and getting started with your journey. So, can you maybe walk us through one of the interesting products that you built from end to end at PhonePe?
Yeah. So I joined PhonePe very early. It was just 2 years since PhonePe had started. So that was 2018. And I stayed with them for about 5 years. So in that 5 years, we saw hyper growth. And there was not just one product that I saw end to end, it was many products. So I was probably one of the go-to 0 to 1 guys at PhonePe and had the privilege of working on so many 0 to 1 products ranging from banking, insurance, investments to merchant payments, right? And those were just part of it that has seen light of day. There were other products that did not even got released,
Yes, I can
um,
imagine.
right? So yeah, so in fact, there were all the products, but one I would like to talk about, which was during the end of my tenure at PhonePe, and last 1 year at PhonePe, I was leading merchant payment products, which included all those offline merchant and online merchant payment solutions, acquisition, retention, and KYC, etc. All those solutions. But one of the product was the smart speaker, which when you pay at any offline merchant, you hear a speaker saying phone pay par 100 रुपए प्राप्त हुए or received 100 rupees on phone pay.
Devya
Um,
Prathama, yes.
yes. So of late there was an Amitabh Bachchan voice as well that actually caught quite an attention.
Attention.
But yeah, so that was a really great product. It wasn't really differentiated per se, but the reason it was significant in my experience as well as for PhonePe was um, it involved a large team to actually make that happen, right? And it was not just a product play or a technology play. It was as good a sales play, operations, legal, everything, right? Everybody had to come together to make that happen. And in terms of impact, also, it resulted in great retention for PhonePe as well, merchant retention for PhonePe as well. So that was a pretty good experience for me.
Very interesting, Nitin. So, Nitin, I would want to go ahead and maybe ask some follow up questions on the same. That whenever, as a product leader, you have to get
so much, let's say, resources or commitment of resources from your leadership, you'll have to make sure that you are like a solving a sizable problem. So how did you make sure that yes, this is a problem
Yeah.
worth going after, and how did you like size the whole thing?
See, you are never fully convinced that a problem is worth going after unless you actually do it, right? But for PhonePe, it was, I think the credit goes to Samir, the CEO, and our business head at that time. Because all of us were fairly convinced because Paytm had launched their soundbox, as they are calling it, and that was a pretty loved product for merchants, right? But we knew that PhonePe had its own strengths in this QR code, in their merchant retention, in their payments reliability, right, and in their customer base. So we had to do it as well. Um, so we sat on it for a very long time. We kept pushing Sami that yes, we have to do it as well. And yes, our business head was able to convince Samir, projecting some of the business assumptions as well, which were related to merchant retention and most prominently our market share, right? So our product, finance, business, everybody had to come together to work on the projections that what will happen when this will be launched, right? And what is the use of this product as well, right? It wasn't easy, I would say, right? Because everything was assumptions, and we had to validate those assumptions before making a strong case about it, right? So what we did was we started visiting merchants, right? And not just in Bangalore, where our corporate team is majorly located, but in all the cities. Our offline sales team, which is a feet on street, as we call, right? Those are present in all the cities across India. So that helped. So we asked them to also visit the merchants and see how are they perceiving the soundbox, right? Because that product was already there. So we got a lot of valuable feedback regarding what they liked and what they didn't like about such a kind of a product, right? And when I say such kind of a product, I actually am normalizing it. I'm actually standardizing it. What I'm saying is a voice-based payment confirmation, right? Which is how we manifested when we were creating a product for it, right? A voice-based payment confirmation. How important is it for the merchants, right? So that was the first thing that we validated. The second thing was the piece of the hardware itself. Do the merchants really need a separate piece of hardware, right? So those are the two broad assumptions that we had to validate in terms of the product need. The second was the business projections. So there, the entire team worked together to make the assumptions, and finally, Samir gave us the go-ahead that yes, we can do it, and that is when the actual research began. What we really figured out, see, and I really encourage all the people listening that to really validate your assumptions. All assumptions are on paper till you actually go and visit, till you actually talk to the merchant or talk to your own customer, right? Because only then you will have conviction. And a product manager needs conviction more than anybody else, because you have to put in the resources, you have to put in the effort, you have to align all the teams, rally all the teams together towards a particular initiative, right? So when we visited the merchants, we actually took pictures. I actually took pictures. I actually saw how merchants are actually plugging in um, their soundbox. How many charging points are there in a shop? So just to give an example, how why charging point is also important, right? So for a device to succeed, it should be always on, and for it to be always on, it should be charged. And for it to be charged, charging facility should be available. But if you talk about, I'm not talking about the mom and pop stores. I'm talking about even smaller merchants, like a pawn shop, right? Like an alcohol store, like a stationery shop, a small stationery shop, right? They would have one or maximum two charging ports where either there or their sales staff would be charging their phones, right? And phones is a priority, right? So at most, if they like our product, at most we'll get one charging point,
Yes.
right? So now we are dealing with a competition and we have to displace the competition, right? That's one. Second is, um, in our merchant app, right? We also gave our merchant app to our merchants. Merchant app was already having a voice-based confirmation. So when you pay on a QR, on a merchant QR, any QR that you pay, in fact, right? All those were converged to one merchant. So when you pay on a QR, the phone also gives a voice-based confirmation, right? But when you talked to the merchant, that's when you realize what the problem is. What we figured, what they said was the voice or the sound is not large enough, right? That it should, the entire store should know that the payment has happened, right?
Yes.
Phone could be kept anywhere. The second was, some of the merchants did not give the app to their staff on their phone just to maintain privacy of the records of sales, right? So now when the merchant or the owner himself was not at the store, there is no voice based confirmation.
Yes.
So rather than building it for a person, we have to build for a store, right? Then we've also had enterprise merchants, or you can imagine a store like a shopper stop, right? There, this kind of a device would not look good. Now, their aesthetics mattered, right? So they said it will not look good on our store. Why can't you build a voice-based confirmation on the POS device itself, on the EDC machine, the swipe machine itself? So things like these, right? So there were so many revelations that we had, so many insights that we gained. We had to divide merchant segments, right? So smaller merchants, like, and then more mass offline, and then enterprise. Even in enterprise, there were national level enterprises and regional level enterprises stores and all. And who would this appeal to, and what should it work? Then we came down to execution, right? Execution, we said, forget differentiation, right? It is important for us to gain market share. It is important for us to. So I'll tell you why market share. I think I didn't touch upon that point. Um, so merchant said that if a machine is speaking, if there is a device, only that QR would be on, because if you pay from any other QR, the device will not give me a confirmation. So that means whichever device wins, that QR also wins, right? And the other way around. So therefore, it's a direct implication of market share. Now it came down to execution. Then he said, PhonePe's strength is reliability. Let's make sure the machine works. As soon as there is a payment, there should be a payment confirmation. Because I visited a store, I remember very clearly, I visited a store and we waited for the evening to visit the store because evening were rush hours. And I really wanted to see the merchant conditions. And it was so loud, so chaotic, right? And I said, I mean, this kind of a store, I mean, when we sit in our offices, we can't even imagine. I mean,
Yes.
when we are testing, right? When you make a payment, we are waiting on our phone. Then we see, oh yes, a payment is. That merchant doesn't even have time to see the phone, right? So that kind of a device, we need large volumes, right? A very high volume, and make sure that every payment is spoken out, because that is what the merchant is relying on. If the payment is spoken out, that means the payment is done and the
Yes.
customer can take the goods away. So those were our pillars that we formed, right? High volume, high battery power, and reliability, right? So the technology team had a task to do, right? The reliability has to be strong. There should not be any drops. The phone and the device should work properly. The sales team had to get ready for the GTM, because we said, unless we carpet bomb this, right?
Yes.
Entire India together, we can't go slow on this, right? Unless we carpet bomb, that means the day we developed, all the shipments from our manufacturers should arrive, all the devices should be configured, and overnight it should be shipped all over India. And then one day, same day, it should be with all the
With them.
merchants. So
Yes.
yeah, it was a very large scale project. It took about 6 to 8 months, which I believe is fast paced considering the size of that project and the variables that it involved. Um, so yeah, it worked very well. The version one was just very basic but highly reliable. Then of course there were version two and so on after that.
Yes, interesting. So, Nitin, I could get one theme from this conversation, which is that like great products cannot be created just sitting in your office behind the screen. You have to get in front of your customer. So, maybe my next question would be that how do you make sure that, let's say, most of the time you are not the user of the product that you are going to build? So, what are the principles or fundamentals that you need to share with
Yeah,
people who want to build products for people whom they are not like a belong? They don't belong to that particular audience.
yeah. So yeah, it is very easy to be your own customer. Start using your own product and feel the pain, and then you fix what you are
Yes.
feeling, right? But that fix may not appeal to a majority of your customers. I think the starting point is to define who your customer is, right? And I always am the proponent of ideal customer persona, right? ICP is, there is a lot of literature around it, but in terms of practice, nobody follows it, right? Or it's very hard. It requires discipline, right? At PhonePe, our persona was the lowest common denominator. We were building for the last mile customer that was sitting in a tier three town. Um, but at Jupiter, for example, we were um, building for somebody. For example, I'll just talk about bits of it, right? We were building for somebody who is financially aware, who has a bit of money, spare money in his bank account, who knows how bank account works, right? And who's independent, who's young, early jobber, wants to be independent, but also wants to be responsible for money and so on, right? So once you have that kind of a discipline and you identify who you are building for, every review, every discussion has to be around that person and that person's needs. I'm calling it a person and not a customer because you have to imagine one person, right? Only then you will be able to relate to that. So that's one. And second is, I think you have to also build a rigor of talking to your customers often. And yes, it is hard to cancel all the meetings and step out of your office and go talk to customers, but it is possible. You can take time out. You should take time out because that's your only job. Um, Many companies follow a no meetings day, right? For especially for product managers and engineers. So that's an opportunity to step out. But even if you can't, even if some of you can't, I think there are few ways where you can listen to your customers and dissociate yourself from the customer and hear. So, for example, there are a lot of customer service calls that are recorded. You should listen to those very often. Visit your Play Store and App Store very often. In fact, if you are in a leadership position, I would encourage you to make a team or make a person accountable that every month this person will summarize everything, right, and get everybody together and make sure everybody hears it, right? अब सिर्फ एक रूम में बुला के, I mean, call everybody in a room and play those recordings. That's also, that will be very helpful, and not just for product managers, but for everybody in your team, right? Whoever you are working with, especially the designers and the engineers as well, right? So those are some of the practices that I think you should do to dissociate yourself from the customer. But at the same time, you should use your product very often as well, so
Yes,
that you
yes,
know
yes.
the glaring things that need to be fixed.
Correct, correct. Very interesting, Nitin. So we also, like, when I was working for this company called Andy Money, we also had this policy that initially, like the major problem that we were facing was that whenever someone signs up for Andy Money, they have to like execute, like import all of their accounts and then put it at one place, and
Hmm.
most of the people
Hmm.
would not go ahead and trust a new app. So what we do is we made sure that yes, whenever customers can go ahead and put their opinion in terms of Play Store, in terms of App Store, in terms of Twitter, Facebook, and Quora and all, we'll make sure that all of that feed is being social listened to, and we'll put it into a public channel for our internal company, so that people could see that yes, these are what the issues are. They can empathize with them, and then maybe even the developers and the product managers can directly connect
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so initially the all the trust that we are able to make at Handy Money was because we were super responsible, like super responsive on multiple of the mechanisms out there.
No, that's a good
Yes,
idea.
thanks a lot,
Put
Nitin.
put everything out in the open, create a Slack channel, like everybody should see. Yeah.
Yes, 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 correct. So yeah, yeah. So people also feel like it also act as a stakeholder management thing for us, because developers know that this is what the impact that they are trying to make, because
Hmm.
all of the time it is not only complaints and bugs, these are appreciations also.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes,
That's true. People forget that.
yes, 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 correct. So yeah, Nathan, one more question on the similar the soundbox part, that
Yeah.
you understand that yes, you told me that yes, soundbox was like something that was a teamwork, like your sales team, your marketing team, your hardware team and software team all work together. What are your tips on stakeholder management at such a complex product?
I think whether the product is complex or not, PM fortunately and unfortunately is at the center of it, center of the execution, right, and is accountable for the success of the product. Um, but yes, the challenges increase with the large team, with a diverse team. I think communication is very important, and however much is said, very less is understood, right? I think I always call it three C's of communication: clear, concise, and consistent, right? And it can be any form. Like you gave an example of the Slack channel, right? That's also like a broadcast communication. At least people got to hear it, right? At least you got your message across. But context setting is critical for a product manager, and for that, communication is important. So you may not. So many times, people come to me in my team. They say that I don't know the answer to this, or I don't know the solution. Okay, I've already understood the problem. So, for example, I will say that focus on the problem first, and then we'll figure out a solution. So they will understand the problem. They say, okay, I'm not able to figure out what the right solution is. I say you don't need to. You just have to make sure that whatever context you have gathered around the problem and around the customer, make sure everybody gets that. Everybody understands. Ideas for solution can come from anywhere. That's the beauty of communication, right? So you get even your sales team or your engineers, your designers, get everybody together and share as much as context that you can, right? And make sure that idea generation can be democratic, and then you can take a lead to decide, right? You cannot make the decision making also democratic. It will be very chaotic environment, but somebody has to decide. But idea generation can be a democratic process, and once that happens, everybody becomes the owner and everybody feels for it, and which is what you want, right? To make sure that your product succeed, everybody should step up and own the product, and that is what leads to a so-called product-led culture, as we call it,
Yes.
right? So yeah, communication helped, and that was the time there. Um, so in that specific example, by the way, we called it smart speaker at PhonePe, which was a trademarked name. Um, so yeah, there were different types of different categories of teams, different skill set. So we had to structure the team also accordingly so that parallel work can happen. That is up to the leadership. How do you structure the team? And then, of course, communication from top down to every function was made sure that it is consistent.
Understood. Interesting. And as we are talking about, let's say, the sales and marketing as well, I just want to ask one more question, which I think would be very important for the audience. They'll be curious about it. That yes, when PhonePe Soundbox launched, Paytm I
Mhm.
think was already in the market, and you guys took like 7-8 months in order to execute and everything. I think 7-8 months after they have launched. So
Yeah.
yeah. So what made like what were the, like, let's say, the conviction that you were able to give to the merchants to move from Paytm to PhonePe, or maybe have PhonePe as their first smart box?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of nuances here, and there is no one size fits all because every city has a different dynamic. Every type of merchant had a different dynamic. So we had a lot of levers to play, right? We said make sure that every merchant at least keeps it on for some time because our QR code was active anyway, right? It wasn't used that much as the other QR was used, right? So at least the input was in place, right? So make sure that merchants keep this on at least for a few days so that they realize the reliability of it, right?
Yes.
And reliability generates trust. So that happened. But to do that, the first sale also had to happen. That was a foot in the door. So there were a lot of levers around pricing, and other promotions that we had, uh, that the sales team also played around. But the product made sure that those capabilities exist, that the decision can be made on the fly by the feet on street person who is talking to the merchant, right?
Understood.
But once that flooding happened, so before even it was distributed, the product team has started working on version 2 already, right? Because we had to work ahead. Um, so though that kind of planning also helped, and so yeah, if I can talk about another example, and that was interesting. And when we were brainstorming version 2, right? Version 2 was also around hygiene, right? Initial ideas came around hygiene, right? That we can increase the battery life, we can create a display on the top and all of that. But again, we were losing in touch with the ground reality, right? And our ground reality also told us that retention is the most important metric. The speaker should be on. That's all we want, right? So we said, what can we do? So let's come down to the basics. Let's get down to the first principles and say that this is just a speaker, right? The form factor is a speaker. What can we do with a speaker that the merchant keeps it on? And there were a lot of ideas that came in. Add Bluetooth to it so that merchants can play song. Why can't we add a radio to it, and so on? All of those ideas came in. Why can't we add a fancy screen on it? Merchants in their off-peak hours can play YouTube videos. At least the speaker will. So many crazy ideas. But then we said, actually, then we had to go back to our own success story, right? So at PhonePe, we created a merchant QR. So on the QR code, merchant could print their own photograph, right? It was expensive. Merchant had to pay extra, but merchants felt so proud that, come to my shop and see, this is my QR, this is my shop, right? So it served as a branding for them, and our QR gained prominence. So then he said, if this kind of a thing can give merchants some confidence and some boost, right? Why can't we play around with the voice that speaks out? So we started
Yes.
adding languages, right? Forget all the hygiene features, just add all the languages, because in many cities the conversation between a customer and a merchant happens in their native
Local
language.
language,
So the
yes.
speaker should also talk in their local language, because it's a big sentence, it's not just a word, right? So that's what we did immediately after the first version, and we made sure that it is an OTA upgrade so that the speaker cannot be replaced. And the second thing that we did was put a voice that people are proud to play in their shops. And that is where the Amitabh Bachchan voice came in. And in
Yes.
other South Indian cities, their regional actors' voice was also recorded later on, and that helped significantly. So yeah, a lot of ideas came in from multiple people, but it was a great execution of the entire team that made this product successful.
Yes, that's a great success story, Nitin.
Yeah,
So, if I could rephrase it, I could say that yes, you build like a very superhero product, and then you made sure that you are giving the autonomy and, let's say, freedom to the on-ground sales team to make sure that they are able to sell in terms of
right.
pricing discounts or whatever it takes them in order to onboard that particular seller.
Correct.
And
Correct.
then it's the responsibility of the product team to make sure that the retention is being played on.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, yes. Interesting, Nitin. So, Nitin, now let's say I think we have discussed a lot about PhonePe. So maybe we'll go ahead and take I would say, a higher level view now. So
Hmm.
you have gone ahead and worked with PNPL products at B2B. You have worked on revamping gold investments at some of the companies, and you have also built so many things at Jupiter and PhonePe. What do you think? What is your framework of identifying? Let's say these are few of the next level opportunities in the fintech space in India, and how should product managers be, let's say,
Yeah.
aligned for the same?
Yeah. Uh, See, for every kind of technology that has changed in financial services, right? Whether it is payments, which is governed by NPCI rules, whether it is investments where SEBI is very active, or insurance where IRDA is very active, and overall RBI is very active here. So a lot of innovation and base technology development has come from the regulators, which is very unique to India, right? And we call it digital public infrastructure, right? So don't I would say don't focus on innovation of the core technology in itself, right? Because the regulator will be fast, and regulator is doing a pretty decent job at it, right? So there was a joke that NPCI is the biggest disruptor in the fintech
Yes.
space, right? So yeah, so don't focus on innovating on the core technology. Um, Focus on, I think one is focus on the user and creating a great user experience. So there is a base technology layer that you have to utilize. On top of it, how do you innovate for your customer? That should be your focus area, right? Because every company is focused on a different user persona, right? And their needs are very different. So how do you innovate on top of that, right? So for example, if bill payment as a capability is introduced, can you create a layer where the user can manage all his household bills together, right? SIP as a basic functionality is introduced, right? Can you make sure that depending on the licenses that you have, can you make sure that you can create a best investment kind of a solution for a customer? Now, that customer could be an early jobber with just 10,000 rupees to spare, or that person could be a mid level executives who has around, let's say, 1 lakh rupees to spare a month. Their investment needs are different. So, build for the user, focus on the user experience. That's one. Second is, I think you should focus on delivering the most reliable technology, right? Because in when you are in fintech, right, whether you are payments or whether you are holding a lot of money, right? So that's the difference, right? Uh, in banking and investment, you are holding the customer's money, so the trust is for a longer period. But for a payment solution, the money responsibility is just in transit, right? But you are still in the money path. So you are dealing with people's money here, right? I mean, unlike Facebook, I'm not saying that it's they're doing a, a easy job, but unlike Facebook, if one of your friends doesn't get added in your list, or your follower count in Twitter doesn't get refreshed properly, here if
Yes.
you lose 10 rupees or 50 rupees, that will matter more to the customer than the other use cases, right? So people take it very seriously, and 10 rupees might not be much for you, but if it gets lost in the system, the trust will be lost. It's not just about 10 rupees, it's about how the system is managing your money, right? So then that gives seriousness. So reliability generates trust, and you really need to focus on your core technology of how you're delivering it so that the trust is established, and it takes a very long time to generate trust,
Yes.
right? So I think
Yes.
these are the few things: user focus and reliability leading to trust are two key focus areas to keep in day-to-day execution.
Yes, and I think, like as you already rightly said, that all the fundamental technologies and bits and pieces are already like provided by the like the compliance agencies already. Like we have NPCI who is doing like a great work over there. So
Yeah.
if we can only think about like what we can create for the users by like combining all of these things and maybe put a reliable solutions at the top of it, that might work, and it has worked out for many companies out there.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes. Next question, Nitin. What do you think about like the future of these neobanks? One of them you have also worked with. What do you think how they are going to evolve? Any kind of competition from the normal banks that we play with?
I don't think there is competition, and there should be in the current scenario in which India works and RBI also works, right? As I said, generating trust takes a long time.
Yes.
People would anyway trust a name SBI than any new private player, right? So, and trust is a very different, trust plays out very differently in India
Hmm.
as well. So, neobanks started with the philosophy that users' experience online is broken, right?
Hmm.
Because banks had mostly catered to their offline experiences, and branches were the major mode of expansion. Till today, it is. But for a small segment, I think I have not visited a bank branch in last few years, right? So for a segment, visiting a branch is alien, right? And therefore, every interaction with a bank happens on their app. And banks did not focus on their app experience. They did focus on their core infrastructure, right? But not on the experience. So this was a core philosophy that Neobank started, that will create a layer over the core banking technology and deliver that experience to the customer. And in India, you cannot have a banking license independently, so you have to work with a partner bank to deliver that experience. So that story was there. That story was novel a few years ago. In fact, at PhonePe also, we did play around with that idea. But I think today consumers have evolved, technologies have evolved. A lot of technologies have come in. Account aggregator, for example, has come in and provided much more capabilities and opportunities in some sense. So I think neobanking in the truest sense, that story is now done, right? And when I say done, as in users will not be satisfied with a basic banking experience. They also want more, right? And today, if you see, every fintech vertical has a leader, right? Whether you call it payments, investments, insurance, everybody has a leader. You have Zerodha and Grow in investments. You have Policy Bazaar and PhonePe in insurance. You have
Hmm.
PhonePe, GPay, Cred, etc. in payments, etc. Everybody has a leader, but they also have other financial services products,
Yes.
right? So I think your question started with future of neobanks, but I think I'll broaden that scope to future of fintech as well. I think everybody will offer every kind of product, right? Because every product has a different uh, uh, behavior with consumer. So, for example, payment is a very high frequency product, whereas lending is a very low frequency and low usage product, right? So, if you are starting with insurance or lending, you have to generate other products as well to increase customer frequency,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and which is what we see is happening, right? Everybody is offering every other product, so it's at some point it's going to consolidate to some extent. Leaders will come out as their anchor product. So PhonePe probably will always be known as a payments product first, right? Than their investment products. So that's why they have to play a very different strategy. Or a Grow will always be known for their investment product first, then their payment
Yes.
product. So their anchor products will always be there, but some sort of consolidation is bound to happen in
Yes.
this space. And I think everybody needs to innovate and keep innovating for evolving consumer needs as well.
Correct. I think that's also a strong theme. So before I could talk about it, just one idea
Yeah.
came to my mind that I also think that financial inclusion in India was also something that was due since a long period of time, because we are talking about the trust, whether people are trusting the banks, but it was also happening that banks were not trusting people. So
Yeah.
now these neo banks are also coming in
Yeah.
between to make sure that
Yeah.
yes, people are able to get access
No,
to
that's
better
a
loans and all.
that's a very good point. And banks are not trusting the people. That's I think you touched a very important point here, because risk is very less understood
Yes.
and
Yes.
forms a very core function within all the fintech companies. So that is what I've seen it happen, right? Risk becomes risk and fraud, right? Becomes very important because if one bad player enters the system, and when I say bad player, it can be a consumer who is misusing the system, or a bad a company that is not respecting the law of the land or respecting compliance, right? That is bad for the entire ecosystem,
Yes.
right? Everybody will come and tighten the screws, and then fintech companies will say, we are not getting enough credit line from the bank, or we are not getting a lot of freedom from the regulator, and so on. So that happens, and that's the cycle, which is why you should really be strict about your risk and fraud rules and be very vigilant in automating all of those if you have to solve something at scale.
Yes, and I think it is very courageous of the NPCI and like all the compliance agencies such as RBI to make sure that they are able to give us these kind of open AIs, and still they are able to go ahead and control all of these things. That's very courageous, and I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah,
any government would go ahead and take that particular risk on their vote banks and all. Yes.
that's true.
Yes, yes, very interesting, Nitin. So, Nitin, my next question would be: let's say we talk about someone who's aspiring to be like a fintech product manager. Either they are already in product management, they want to get into fintech, or they are an aspiring product managers. What is going to be, let's say, your roadmap that you are going to suggest to them if they want to? They are really interested in getting into fintech.
So, see, getting into fintech and succeeding in fintech are two different things, right?
Yes.
So, getting into fintech is just about getting into any kind of an industry. There is no difference, I would say, because I think companies have realized that um, if you get somebody not from that industry, then actually that person performs better. And that's my belief as well. What I have learned so far, that person actually performs better because he or she doesn't have any biases,
Yes.
right, of the industry, and so you are able to view things from a fresh perspective, right? So getting into fintech will involve the basics of any industry, right? Whether it is an internal promotion or starting at an APM program of any company, right? But succeeding into fintech requires a very different approach than succeeding in any other industry, right? There are a few things, right? Few nuances. One is, what you have to keep in mind is, do not mess with the regulator, right? In many industries, you can be a challenger and be bold and come out that I'm going to change things. This is not how it is supposed to happen. It's okay. You can keep that mindset, and you should, but not from a compliance perspective, right? The right approach would be to partner with the regulator than to challenge the regulator, right? And the regulator is very open. RBI and NPCI, they have a lot of partnerships available there where they listen to you. Because we are, as fintechs, right? These are the channels of what the customer needs are and what the customer is asking for. So they are listening and they are innovating on top of that. So partner with them well. Second is, I think you need to understand the business very well, right? See, fintech is financial services first and technology second. Technology is the enabler that helps you scale the product and build out efficiencies in the business. But you need to really understand the business because it is money business, right? It is not. Uh, it is not social networking. It is not chatting. It's not as in communication, but it is money, right? And when it is money, it directly has an impact on your balance sheet as a company,
Yes.
right? So for example, when it comes to payments, you need to understand how does money flow happen, right? When it is credit cards, for example, you need to understand how different card networks work and who makes how much money so that your product is able to scale, right? So basics of finance and business is very important. And I think the third is a shift in mindset. Um, because, and it took me also some time to figure this out. But in this case, your product is not just the app. Your product is the financial services product, right? So you need to really understand the margins that can be taken out from everywhere so that a product construct can be created,
Yes.
right? For example, a loan is not successful. I mean, what is a loan, right? I give money to you, which you need, and everybody needs a loan, right? So giving out is easier, but collecting is hard.
Hard.
But how much should I give out to you? That's the risk part. And how much should I collect and when? Which is basically understanding the financial aspect part of it. because that is how because pricing is part of the product in this particular case. So these are the three nuances. I'll just summarize that for you, right? So one is partner with the regulator, right, and not mess with them.
Yes.
Second is understand the business of money, and third is make financial services that you're offering as a product and not just technology.
Very interesting. I think that's a great summarization. Thanks for that, Nitin. Nitin, now I have like a very interesting question for you. That let's say Nitin has worked across all the fintechs of the world, and now Nitin has an opportunity to start their own business in fintech. What would Nitin do?
It's very hard. It's very hard.
Yeah.
See, last 7, 8 years, I think 2015, 16, when 16 was demonetization happened, right? And I think 12, 13, Geo was the first revolution, then demonetization, and then COVID, which helped the fintech
Yes.
revolution in
Yes.
India.
Yes.
So I think a lot of companies have come in and established as leaders. So I think it will be fair to say that the low hanging fruit is taken. Yeah, so it is very hard. It is very hard. I would really think twice in starting in fintech right now, especially consumer fintech, right? But still, there are some green shoots, some opportunities left, and we really have to keep an active eye on those opportunities. One is in the infrastructure space, right? Because now everybody wants to expand and grow fast, including the banks, right? But banks need some reliable partners to grow, right? Whether it is a bank or whether it is NPCI or whether it is an NBFC, right? Everybody needs that infra layer, or even the fintechs need that infra layer to connect with the regulator, right? So I mean, there are smaller companies like Razorpay has also been doing that. M2P is one of the leaders in that space. It's an underdog, but it has come out really well. So that's one space. Zeta, for example, is also developing infra for HDFC. So infrastructure space is good. You can make money from day one if you're able to sell.
Yes.
Um, I think the second is when it comes to consumer fintech, I always am a firm believer of digital public infrastructure because I believe the likes of Nandan Nilekani and the regulators are doing a great job. They will create
Yes.
something for us. So account aggregator is something that is evolving, right? And there is so much data that can be centralized and democratized. When I say democratized, like everybody will have equal access to a data as long as the consumer provides consent. Now,
Yes.
what can you do with that data? That is something that is not done efficiently yet because all the financial partners have not come on board successfully, right? There are stories around we can make lending more efficient, we can make personal finance more efficient, right? So these are some stories, but these are not yet proven. These are opportunities here because personal finance management is a need, but is not solved for very efficiently today.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
using account aggregator, there's an opportunity to do it. The third space is the health and life insurance space. So if you see everybody who is launching and succeeding in insurance, they are doing it in the general insurance space or probably the sachet insurance space, right? Sachet is small ticket,
Like the toffee
right?
insurance. Yeah.
Like the toffee insurance, exactly, right?
Yes. Yes.
There
Yes.
was a company also called Toffee,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes.
Because the entry barrier is very low. Or general insurance because it is mandated. Everybody needs a car insurance or a bike insurance because that is mandated. But
Correct.
health and life is something that people don't give importance to, right? That's probably because of lack of awareness and lack of education. And there is also people's mentality like, "Ki nothing will happen to me,
Yes. Yes.
right? I have lived healthily so far. Why should I pay premium? Nothing will happen." So that's a very different kind of a mindset that only India has. If you see many developed economies, that's not the mindset that is there. So I think that space needs to evolve. But more than fintech, I think policymakers also have to play a very significant role to change this. So we have to, if I were to start, I'll probably keep an active eye on how policies are evolving in the life and health insurance space. Right? That could be tax breaks, that could be mandating employers for a life and health. I don't know. There could be multiple things that could be done. But unless there is a policy around it, right, I would probably hold back. And anything changes, I'll keep an active eye on these three opportunities that are yet to be explored.
Yes, yes. I think those are wonderful clues. I'm not sure if you are going to use them, but some of the viewers are definitely going to. Thanks a
Yeah.
lot for that, Nitin. Now, Nitin, we'll move ahead to the rapid fire round where I'll ask you a question and then we'll take your quickest time
Okay.
in order to answer this.
Okay.
So my
Let's go.
first, yes. So my first question is, what is the most unconventional product decision that you have taken, and maybe it worked out really well for you?
Unconventional. Uh, I won't call it really unconventional per se, but yeah, against the crowd, against the common wisdom. So we had to grow mutual funds at PhonePe, and we had launched all the mutual fund categories and put it out there. So I suggested to change the positioning per se, because at PhonePe we have never done that. If you see PhonePe app, it's very to the point, right? Pay electricity bill, it is there, and everything just says what it is, right?
Yes,
But mutual funds was very different. We started with collections. We say start with 100, monthly SIPs and things like that. So we changed our positioning so much. We faced a lot of resistance internally because it challenged the core information architecture of the app. But eventually that worked. I'll keep it short because it is rapid fire, as you say.
yes.
But
Yeah,
I think
totally.
that worked for us.
Yes, understood. Thanks a lot, Nitin. And then we have, let's say, if you have to pick one metric to measure the success of a product,
Mhm.
what would it be and why? I understand that depends on context, but maybe a rapid fire one.
Yeah, it is. It depends on the context, but if I have to really pick one, gun on the head, I would say retention
Okay.
is that metric, because that demonstrates product market fit, whether it is B2C or a B2B product.
Yes. Very interesting. And I think retention is important because retention is all about like whether people are going to use your product for a longer period of time or not.
Yeah.
And that is for it. It needs to have value and you need to have a great understanding of the users. Yes. So I think everything boils down to you have to connect with your customers and all. Yes. And
Yep.
a third question, Nitin, what's the biggest mistake you see that new product managers or rookie product managers make?
Uh, if I have to pick one, I think it's solution first thinking,
Hmm.
because most of the people have come from design or tech background and they fall in love with the technology and the solution, and that's natural. But solution first thinking is always seldom yields successful results. You
Hmm.
have to think of the problem and deep dive into the problem, and the solutions will emerge. So do a top down problem first, then bottoms up solution first approach.
Yes, correct. So Nitin, I'll take like a quick break at this point of time because
Hmm.
what we'll do is okay because this is like an important question and I also like asked multiple people the same kind of question and it is all across like everyone says that yes you have to be a problem first mentality and solution has to come later. But still when I go ahead and talk to new product managers, everyone is making that mistake again and again, even if we tell them 100 times. So what do you think would be like the basic reason for the same? And any stories that you can tell when solution centric was a disastrous one?
Uh, I think the reasons are multiple. I think one is, of course, laziness. See, because we have a lot of tools available uh, that can help us validate a lot of ideas in a very short span of
Yes.
time. So I
Yes.
would rather say I'll do 10 experiments in the last 2 weeks, and then I'll figure out what will work,
Yes.
right? So it's easy to say that, but it's very hard to do it, because one is you cannot do 10 experiments in 2 weeks successfully, unbiased experiments. Second, in 2 weeks, I don't know how much data you will gather. So you really have to build at scale to gather sufficient data to make a good decision. And the third is you don't know which type of customer is responding to what product, right? So you might lose focus that uh, are you really collecting feedback from the customer who you are building it for, right? So those are some of the problems, some of the reasons why this happens. And problem first is hard because it forces you to get out of your comfort zone, right? It forces you to get everybody together and get 20 minds, force 20 minds to think and get everybody's context. India is not very strong on writing culture as well,
Hmm.
right? And sorry, I'm generalizing it to India, but this is my observation. Most of the places that I go to, there are only a few
Yes.
companies that mandate it and do it very well, because that enforces clarity of thought, right? So those are the few reasons that I think it doesn't happen. Um, if I have to think of an example, uh, I think insurance, when we were launching at PhonePe, right? It was a new product for us, new category for us. right? But because we also had some in-house insurance experts who have been there, done that. We had a lot of secondary research, market research data. So rather than asking for our customers what is, it would have been obvious now thinking back that, ask the customers, what do they think of insurance? How do they approach insurance? When I say insurance, what comes to your mind? Because we had to launch a new category. So it was also a challenge for us to educate and make people aware that PhonePe also sells insurance. So we said, based on our knowledge, um, international travel insurance is an easy one because most of our elite customers would travel abroad, and every international travel insurance is bought online. So it will be easier, right? So let's launch that. And it bombed.
Hmm.
Right? There were hardly 10 to 15 people who bought insurance in the first week. Right? I don't know. I may be wrong on that number. It was very low. Right? It bombed so bad. But we were uh, aware, we were very active to fix it, to go back to it. We wrote down what we learned and we said never to do that again. But
Yes.
then COVID happened, so we were now quick enough to react, listening to customers. Again, customers wanted COVID insurance, so we launched that very quickly. And then came motor insurance, which actually came out of customer research,
Hmm.
right? So yeah, so that actually was a mistake that happened. That was a very costly one. We lost a lot of time.
Yes. Yes. Very interesting, Nathan. And also, I also think that maybe sunk cost fallacy is also something that kicks in once
That is true.
that you are too much solution centric, because you are not creating product. You have gone ahead and done something, give it to the developers because you are calling it an experiment, but now you want to stick to that
Yeah,
experiment because you have invested in terms of time.
correct. And developers have worked for 2 weeks. Now
Yes, you
let
need
them
to give them
complete
something.
it. Yeah. Or I cannot. Yeah, that reminds me that also there is also one mindset that says I cannot keep the developers free. So
Yes,
just
yes,
give them
yes, yes,
something. Just give them
yes,
something to build,
yes.
right? So I said, if developers are free, let them also participate in user research. I mean, yeah,
Right. Yes, very good, very good. Interesting, Nathan. And now maybe my next question would be that what is your go-to method for gathering and acting on user feedback?
yeah. I think I briefly touched upon it earlier today's discussion. I think there are ideal would be to talk to your customers again. I'm drilling down on that, harping on that topic again and again. But go to method is the first one directly is the easiest one. Listen to customer service calls, and if you are a bit more active, if you want to go a step ahead, actually participate in customer service calls and talk to your
Yes.
customers. Only then you will feel the pain, right? Second is, of course, look at the Play Store, App Store data. There are a lot of unhappy customers out there, very willing to write a negative review about you, right? And the third is where you really need to deep dive is understand your data very well, right? Because your data tells you how your product is used or not used,
Hmm.
right? So you really need to understand your data well before deciding or before building your roadmap. First, look at how your data is used. You might be very bullish on a particular feature, but people are not using it or not using the way they were supposed to or you thought they will use, right? That will reveal a lot of things, whether it is not marketed well, whether it is not actually solving the problem, or the form is different. Probably the feature is fine, but the form is different. It can change. So there are a lot of insights that can be built over that, and this is not an easy task. So these three methods, even if you listen, process, getting input is one thing, but processing input is another, right?
Yes.
I've seen a lot of cases where people have collected a lot of data, a lot of inputs, a lot of insights, but they don't know what to do with it,
Yes.
right? So processing an insight, processing an input is very hard, and that comes with practice. And for that, you also need to understand behavioral science, right? How do customers behave, and why do they behave in a certain way? It is also important to learn from competition,
Hmm.
because sometimes you can get an idea from competition, right? You don't really need to innovate. You can just do certain things well that your competition is doing.
Yes.
So it's very less understood. People take it on their ego, right? इन्होंने कर लिया है. We have to do something different.
Yeah.
You don't need to. You can better
Yes.
execution is also something different,
Correct. And I think we have discussed a lot of examples today on same as
Yeah.
well. So yes, Nathan. And also I think that there is also a loop that whenever someone is starting out in product management and they listen to all the wisdom and all, yes, they would want to go ahead and do user research, but because they do not know how to, let's say, compile that user research and use that user research, they will not get time in order to utilize it. And then next time when they want to go ahead and do the user research, same thought will come that I
Yeah.
can do this, but what is the use? And then after some period of time, you are saying that everyone is going ahead and playing on their intuition and all.
Yeah. Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Yes.
true.
Yes. Yes. Correct. And maybe one concluding question that, let's say, if you could give one piece of advice to aspiring product managers, what would it be?
Uh, so I'll go a bit different here. I think do not. So I'm talking. You're talking about aspiring product managers,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I think s- assuming you are still in the industry, you are deep in the tech industry, don't hesitate to get your hands dirty
Hmm.
or feel that you are stepping on anybody else's shoes, right? If it is not your function, even then everybody needs help. Start stepping up, whether it is part of documentation, user research, brainstorming, right? Solutioning discussion, data analysis, writing queries yourself. All of those skills are very useful, right? So don't hesitate to go deeper and get your hands dirty, right? And regardless of your background. So even if you are a designer, learn basic SQL skills. Even if you were an engineer and want to become a product manager, start dabbling in Figma,
Yes.
right? So these are some things that will come in very handy with you because you also have to empathize with other functions. You know
Hmm.
what it takes to create, you know what it takes to build, right? That's one. I think I'll add one more. You asked for one, but I'll add one more. I think if you are a product manager, people feel that the size of the team that I manage demonstrates my success, right? That is absolutely not true,
Hmm.
right? It's the complexity of the product that you manage that defines the success, that defines the success of your product.
Yes.
So if you are an IC, be thankful that you are an IC,
Hmm.
right? IC as in independent contributor,
Contributor.
right?
Yes.
So stay an IC for a very long time and perfect your craft,
Yes.
right? Create beautiful products with your hand. You will still get to manage to demonstrate influence because without influence you cannot work. But don't be in a hurry to manage a team, right? People management can be done later on, and
Hmm.
that comes in the way of creating great products.
Yes. Wonderful, Nitin. So I also have like something to add over here that like although most of people like desire to become product managers, but maybe I think the better articulation would be that you need to deserve what you desire. And like interesting example from one of our cohorts at HelloPM was that there was a person Asim, and he was working as a front end developer at Freshworks. So he has gone
Hmm.
ahead, talked to his manager that I want to become a product manager and I'm doing these courses and all. He was new in the course, and then the manager denied that you are too important to as a front end developer. We cannot put you
Yeah.
into the product team. So rather than stopping over there, what he did was whatever we are teaching him, he would just go ahead and bother his product managers, work with them, create documentation, and user research is never enough. You can get as many hands as possible. So
Yeah.
the product managers asked him to do the user research and all. After that, what he did was he interviewed in multiple companies. And when he interviewed multiple companies, he got two offers. And then again, he talked to the manager. And
Nice.
then he was like, it was very hard for his manager to go ahead and let him go because he
Yeah.
was already working. He was about to leave. And then right now, that person is a senior product manager at Freshworks only. So he was able to make that
Nice.
transition. Yeah.
Nice.
So I think you have to like deserve what you desire because I've seen
Right.
many people, they want to be product managers, but why would a company take you if you can go ahead and maybe do not showcase what you can bring to the table? Yes. So
Yeah.
yeah, Nitin,
Yeah.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. That was a very interesting conversation. I would also appreciate if you could share some of the resources which would help people to understand, let's say, basics about fintech. We talk about, let's say, how what are the different kind of policies that RBI comes up with. We can talk about, let's say, how do you understand basics of finances, so that I can attach all of those along with your
Sure.
LinkedIn profile in the description, and people might get the best use of the same.
Sure. Thanks, Ankit.
Any
Thanks
yes,
for
anything
the
in
opportunity.
conclusion you would want to add, Nitin?
No, I think it is a very good time to for fintech industry and for India as a whole in financial services. People have a lot of money to spare, a lot of money to spend. People are educated now. Young people are educated now. So and last week there was GFF Global Fintech Festival. It was attended
Yes.
by more than 80,000 people. That's huge, right? So it's good time to be in fintech, but respect your own industry as well,
Yes.
right? Um, Maybe there is gold rush probably for us for only a limited time. We don't know, but yeah, for I think the future of India is looking bright when it comes to financial services.
Yes, yes. Very interesting. Completely agree, Nitin. Thanks a lot for being with us. I'll make sure that this summary of this podcast, along with all the resources that you share, would be available in the description. And people, if you want to connect with Nitin, I think he's available to provide you some kind of mentorship if you want to get into a product role or get from a senior or mid-level manager to a leadership role. So he should be able to help you out. I'll attach all of his links in the description as well. Thanks a lot for being
Awesome.
with us, Nitin.
Yeah. Thank you, Ankit.